Now that our tea wash is dry, we can start to apply our shadow for the form of the entire artichoke. We're going to put some shadow on this side and bring it around, and we're going to take some shadow on this side and bring it around and leave this area completely light for the highlight. We're going to ignore all of the shapes that we have here and just think in terms of the overall form. And you can work three ways. You can work with botanical gray if you choose. You can work with neutral tint if you choose. You can use the complement. But what I did here is I have mixed the complement into the green. So I'm going to take some of that and I'm just going to dilute it way down, and I'm going to use that as my shadow color. So just test it. Let's see what it looks like. And I think that's probably dark enough. And I'm going to use two brushes because I do not want any edges. And I'm going to start on the left-hand side, because that's where the lightest shadows are going to be. And I'm going to just run it along the edge here and quickly blend this with my other brush. So I don't have any edges. Now don't worry too much if you get a little bit of an edge, because the green is going to cover a lot of things once you start putting in your local colors. And this will of course dry much lighter. And then we're going to put some shadows along this other edge. And even though there are highlights in these areas, those highlights will not be as bright as the ones that are in the light area for the form. So we're going to start up here. And you don't want to go too far because you want the local color to do some of the work for you. But this overall shadow helps to define the structural form of the artichoke. And then you can go back in and work on the rest of the colors. Now we're going to need a shadow on this side. Okay, so we're going to let that dry. And then we'll come back and we'll put in the shadows for each one of these brats. Okay, this is dry enough that we can start to put in some of these darks. So let's take a look at our photograph, and that'll kind of tell us where things have to be put. If you squint at your image or your subject matter, it will tell you where the darks are and where the lights are. And by squinting, you eliminate all of this little information here, all these striations in the petals, in the brats themselves, because really they are incidental to the overall structure. So if we look at this, where are darks? We have some darks here, we have some darks here, we have darks down in here, and darks here. Now these are going to have to be graded tones, so you can still use your shadow color, and then I'm going to add just a little bit more pigment to it and test, because I want it to be a little bit darker than what we've been working with originally. So I know that this area in here is going to be quite dark, so I am going to fill in very carefully, fill in this area where there's quite a deep shadow. And watch for these puddles, because you do not want to leave these puddles on your painting. You can use your photograph to help you with this. Now I have a shadow here which defines the edge of this brat right here. So I'm going to put that in because that's a pretty dark shadow. And I'm going to lay that in. And you don't have to go too dark at first. So you'll be all right if you have to go back in and add more shadow later on. So that's a big shadow in this area here. And I may want to add more later, but I'm going to wait. Now, except that maybe I could add a little bit on this edge here, on this top part of the brat, and bring it down. Soften those edges with a little water. Now this guy here is quite dark, and I see that I made a little bit of a mistake in the way that this brat comes in. So this is the inside, so this brat comes in front of it. So I want to make sure that I don't paint that area. So this is a dark area in here. And you don't have to go too dark at first. You can hold off and do another layer after you've got some local color in there, if it'll make you feel more secure. And down in this area here, it's really quite dark. So I'm going to put some shadow in that area here. We keep going on this until we have everything that we need where we need it. Now you'll notice down here on this particular brat, we've got reflected light here, so we want to keep that area fairly light. So I'm going to leave this alone for the time being. I'm going to do the shadow on this brat here and then these brats here. And you can see already how this is starting to develop some form. And not too big because it's in the highlight area and it kind of fades out pretty quickly. We just keep going until we've got this whole thing pretty much figured out. I'm still working with this diluted shadow mix that I created in the very beginning. But again, we've got a little reflected light, so we're going to soften this bottom edge. You're really much better off if you soften things, because you can go back in later and always add a hard edge. Now I'm going to add a bit more shadow on this stem based on the fact that the stem is underneath these brats, and I'm going to leave this area a little lighter so it's kind of ambient light. And just blend it through. All right, so now, interestingly enough, we have a very distinct shadow on this side because of this brat casting a shadow onto this front brat that we have here. So we're going to have a very distinct line, and I would even go a little darker, taking from my dark shadow and just making it really distinct. So you can see now, not only do we have roundness, but now we have all the definition for the shapes itself. And I haven't put all the shadows in, you know, because sometimes you want the shadow to be created by the green color that is in this subject. So now we're ready to paint, you know, start putting color into the artichoke.